All right, what up everybody? Welcome to Operation Moksha. As always, I'm your host, Chris Roscoe, and today we're doing something really special that I've been wanting to do for a very long time. I'm gonna be introducing you to one of my favorite characters in the history of fiction, a villain from the anime called Naruto, dude named Pain. When I first heard his epic villain monologue, it stopped me dead in my tracks. Have you ever seen those villains that like you hear them kind of give their whole spiel and you're like, wait a minute, this dude's actually kind of spitting facts. And you kind of have to rethink like a lot of things about your worldview. This was that to the ultimate degree for me, especially because of the time and place I was when I heard this monologue. It completely shattered my view of reality and had me relook at myself, the world that I lived in, my work, integration as a whole, and just had me reevaluate a lot of different approaches to myself, to social issues, conflict, and just life in general. I'm very excited to get into this. In order to start, we're gonna introduce you to who Pain is. Pain, his name is Nagato. This picture that I'm showing you right now is not his real face. This is his real face. His name is Nagato, and he has this red hair which signals him out as a member of the Uzumaki clan, the only other living member of the Uzumaki clan other than Naruto, which is a big deal because he's the only person that can carry these certain set of eyes. They require a tremendous amount of energy in order to use because they have a huge energy output, and so only people from this specific clan are able to carry these eyes. So the main villain of the series that shows up later put these eyes in this little kid when he was too young to even notice. This is important because his story really begins, his real story begins the day his parents are murdered. Because his village is constantly surrounded by these bigger villages that are always at war, his village just gets and one of the villages that has his village more than any other is the village hidden in the leaves, which is where the main protagonist Naruto is from. It is this village where the ninjas that killed his parents came from. Now, it's important to know a little bit about his parents. His parents were actually there to provide humanitarian aid to the people that were ravaging their village. So these were the best of the best people. They didn't want any part of this war. It came to their doorstep anyway, and they chose to make sure that the people affected by the war were taken care of medically and that they got to survive and thrive and live on with their lives, even though this war was completely f***ing their village. However, one night, these two ninjas from the Hidden Leaf village are looking for food. They're in this war-torn area, they're completely screwed, and they have nowhere to look for food. They think the house is abandoned, so they go in looking for food. Nagato's dad hears the rumbling and goes to check it out, and he sees that there's ninjas there. And he knows that they're fucking ninjas, so it's only a matter of time before they see them and shit goes down. So in what I consider to not be the smartest move in the world, he takes a preemptive strike against these ninjas who immediately kill him because they're ninjas and he's a doctor, so figure that one out. His mom ends up dead. Everyone is so mired in war that the moment you see someone you don't recognize, you just fucking kill them. And that's just kind of how the world is. When these ninjas realize that they killed these parents in front of the kid, they actually feel really bad and they're horrified by what they did. But because this particular kid was given those fucking eyes that I told you about before, he goes completely ballistic and completely murders the two ninja standing in front of him, which is an insane thing to do because he's like a little kid. And these are full-grown, highly trained ninja, and he just wipes him out immediately. This is the beginning of what forms his mentality and his view about the world. There are these big nations that will just take things away from him, and there's nothing he can do about it. There's nothing anyone can do about it. This is just the way the world works. After his whole world is completely shattered, he goes on and lives his life and finds these other two orphans named Yahiko and Konan. These two little kids, they band together and they do everything they can possibly do to survive together in this war-torn area. And as they're doing this, they start to dream of a better world. They dream of a better world that doesn't have these problems, that doesn't create war orphans, where kids' parents aren't killed when they're trying to do the right thing just by being in the wrong place at the wrong time, where all these horrible things don't happen anymore. These kids decide that they want to create peace through peaceful means because that is who Yahiko is. He basically gets Nagato to see the world in a more positive light. He gives him hope. He helps him see that the world can be better than what is given to him up until this point, which he desperately needs. As they get a little bit older, they also start to realize that the only way they're ever going to achieve this plan that they have is by being strong enough to stand up to other people, so they have to learn ninjutsu. So at this point, they're pretty strong, and they form the dopest organization in the history of fiction, or at least with the coolest character designs I've ever seen, the group called the Akatsuki. And the point of this organization is to create peace through peaceful means. They're pretty strong, they're pretty badass, so they gain notoriety. They get bigger and bigger and bigger. And as a result, the guy that ran the village that Yahiko was originally from, this son of a bitch named Hanzo of the Salamander. He's like, you know what? I like the cut of your jib, boys. I like what you're up to. I like how you're doing your shit. I want to help you. And he's the leader. He's like one of the most badass dudes alive at this point. So allying with him is going to put them in a pretty damn good position to see their plan to fruition. However, this guy gets talked to by the villain that really doesn't have any redeeming qualities to speak of, this son of a bitch named Danzo Shimura. He is essentially the shadow ruler of the village hidden in the leaves. He knows that if this group gets bigger, he is going to threaten the power of his village, which is the biggest, most powerful village there is. He is kind of like the shadow ruler of this village, so he's like, yo, I can't let you guys get bigger, because if you do, you're going to threaten what we built, and that ain't going to fly. So he basically convinces Hanzo to turn on the Akatsuki, and as a result, Yahiko, the kid, the man, the one person that got Nagato to see the world in a more hopeful lens and think that peace through peaceful means is possible, gets fucking murdered by the man they had trusted to help them bring their plan to fruition, was ultimately led to betray them by the guy ruling the same village that the village that killed his parents is from. Once again, he flips the fuck out and kills everybody. And there's like 100+ people here, and he just wipes them all out immediately. He looks at his dead friend and he says, okay, this was all bullshit. Creating peace through peaceful means was never gonna happen. As much as I love this guy, he was fucking wrong. Everything I've seen has shown me that the only way we're ever gonna create lasting peace is through shared pain. That's the only thing that's gonna do it. And so that is when he dons the name Pain. And it's this bizarre, ironic, tragically beautiful, horrible thing. He actually takes over the body of Yahiko and makes him the face of this new movement. The guy that got him to believe in hope is now the face of the movement, creating peace through terror. He turned this man that he loved and believed in into the epitome of everything he didn't want to be. And that's when you know his mentality is officially flipped for good. Like, he decides that he's gonna start take over. So he gets bigger and badder people. He starts creating this big giant war machine, because he's like, if I'm going to be the one that creates peace, it's going to be because everyone is so afraid of me that they will not step up to me, and they will get along simply because they know if they get out of line that I will smash them. This is how he thinks he's going to create peace. You know, a few years later on down the road, he decides to enact his plan to destroy the Hidden Leaf Village. Now, there's a few reasons this is important. First of all, it's the village that the ninjas that killed his parents came from. It's the village that the guy that got his potential ally to betray him from came from. And it's also the biggest, most powerful village in the entire world that feeds a lot of these wars. He's got a personal vendetta against them, and he also knows that if he can subdue them and make an example out of them, then everyone else is basically gonna shit their pants and do whatever he says. So he shows up one day and just destroys the entire village in one move. Thousands of people dead, everything destroyed, just rubble. Naruto shows up at the last minute to try and save the day or whatever, but he's actually not strong enough. This other guy is way more badass, so he subdues him. Naruto's all like, F you, bro, like you f***ed my village up and you killed all my friends, like I'm gonna get you because you're a bad guy. And this is when he hits him with the monologue.
What about my family? My friends? My village? They suffer the same fate as this village at the hands of you Hidden Leaf Ninja. How is it fair to let only you people preach about peace and justice?
What the hell are you talking about?
You and I are the same. We're both motivated by our desire for peace and justice. The justice that I have delivered against the Leaf Village is no different from what you are trying to do to me. Everyone feels the same pain when losing something dear. You and I have both experienced that pain. You strive for your justice, and I strive for mine.
If one person just stops fighting, well, then the other person dominates them. So you can't just stop. There has to be some kind of solution to this problem, because it does go back and forth like this forever and ever and ever, and it gets more and more intense. And this is important because at the time that I was watching this was, I think, like 2015 area like that, where the culture wars they'd been going for a little while and they were starting to get more and more heated. And there was like riots and fights in the streets like every fucking week. And so like one side would get upset about something and then they would do some shit. And then the other side would get upset about something and then they would do some shit. And it would just kind of go back and forth, and everybody was blaming each other without taking any responsibility for what they were doing. And I was watching this dynamic that this villain played out, or this villain described, play out right in front of my eyes. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's exactly what's happening. This is just gonna kind of keep going forever. And even though the violence and the intensity has died down to a large degree, there's still this intense psychological divide in America, where I live, between like left and right-wing political people. They constantly attack each other, and they never seem to take responsibility for the things that they did, and they only want to point at the things that the other person did. And so it just keeps this spiral going back and forth and back and forth. And I was like, what the f are we gonna do about this? And if you notice, this happens in relationships too. Like once relationships start to get kind of shitty, it ends up being this like tit for tat, like, and nobody takes responsibility. It ends up being this whole victim mindset, finger pointing bullshit. And so I had to sit for a really long time and kind of think about it. And then it kind of dawned on me that it's the integrative process that solves this problem. This problem is what happens internally when two parts are at odds with each other. One part can't just stop, because that's not how people work. It's not how things work. If a part of you has something to say, if a person has something to say, they will say it. And if you try and hold them down, they will do whatever they have to do in order to get strong enough to overpower you and say what they have to say, which is exactly what I was seeing in the culture around me. People were feeling oppressed. People were feeling stepped on. All these things were happening, and so they mustered all the fight and the energy that they could to turn the tide and swing things on the other side. But then these motherfuckers were like, oh no, can't have that. And that's exactly what happens internally during the integrative process. And like I said before, one side can't just stop. Anytime you try to suppress a part of your personality, it's going to fight to come back. And anytime you suppress a collective group of personalities, they will fight to come back. And they will have their day, they will be heard. This is why revolutions happen. This is why these things happen with these impossible odds. The people still sometimes win, or the other side wins, because that's just how strong the human spirit is. And you have to understand that, and you have to contend with that. Understand what it is in order to conquer this problem. Otherwise, it's just naive idealism that isn't gonna lead anywhere. Naive idealism is dangerous because it doesn't take the human condition into consideration. And so you're playing with these arbitrary rules that don't fit into what a person is. And then the reality of what a person is surfaces in the ugliest and most unexpected ways, and people don't know what to do with it because it doesn't fit into the framework. So you have to take this element of humanity into consideration when you are dealing with your own internal conflicts as well as external conflicts. I'm aware that this is the type of thing where I'm planting a seed of a tree that I'll never sit under the shade of type of deal. Because this kind of collective integration is gonna take longer than I'm gonna live. But what I know is that when you have two different parts of your personality that are at odds with each other, and you know they're never gonna stop, the only thing that helps is having them both fully express themselves, having them both be fully heard and understood to where both sides feel heard and understood, and then to try and figure out what they're really upset about in the first place and try and find the healthiest way possible to deal with that thing. That is how you deal with two opposing parts of your personality. If there's the part of you that wants to go accomplish big things and there's a part of you that doesn't want to do anything, you got to find the common ground. You want to go do stuff because that's going to make a cool life, and you don't want to do anything because we need rest and relaxation and we need to recharge and play. So how about we balance the two, we'll push as much as we possibly can, and then we run out of steam, we'll let this one take over and do what it needs to do. Boom, these two different parts that used to be at odds with each other now have a way of collaborating because you took the time to listen to what they wanted to accomplish, why they wanted to accomplish it, and found a way for them to collaborate. This is how all internal conflicts get resolved. This is how I resolve my external conflicts. And this is how I believe we can resolve the cultural conflicts. I'm not fucking stupid and idealist enough to think that this is something that I can accomplish. This is something that is going to take a very long time. And each one of us committing to the integrative process and dealing with all of our internal conflicts in the healthiest way possible turns us into the types of people that can handle our external conflicts in the healthiest, best way possible. And if we can do that, we can show the rest of the world a new way that is possible. And it can grow as a movement, but it must be started by you dealing with your internal conflicts. This guy made it very real to me that if some force doesn't come in and change the rules of the game, it's just revenge after revenge, conflict after conflict, and it will go that way forever and ever and ever, because both sides of whatever conflict have to be heard, they have to be seen, be understood, and they will do whatever the they have to in order to make sure that happens. So as far as I can tell, the only way to deal with internal, external, and societal conflicts is to make sure that everybody actually gets heard, listened to, and understood. I've seen some extreme examples of this. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy named Daryl Davis, but he is this black Southern jazz musician dude who has collected like over 200 clan robes. And the way that he does this is by just sitting with high-level members of the clan and just hanging out with them. And once they see that he's not what they thought they were, their mindset breaks down and they're like, wait a minute, I actually don't have a reason to hate you. And then they become friends. And then this happened to 200 people. And so to me, this is the most over 200 people. And we're talking like high level, like grand wizards, like the motherfuckers that run the shit. He's got their robes and everything. So to me, this is an incredible example of the fact that even some of the most like hateful people in the world who really have their heels in the ground are just like, no, this is who the I am. Like, I'm leading the clan. Even those people, when treated in a certain way, can see the error of their ways, see that they don't really see things the way they really are, come to new realizations, change the way they are, and become friends with people that they used to fucking hate. So I know this is possible. If this guy can collect 200 robes, then to me, that's proof of concept to know that anybody can change as long as they're treated in the right way. However, I know that there's a lot of motherfuckers out there that don't want to do that. You've been treated poorly, you've been hurt, so you don't necessarily want to have compassion for the people that have treated you that way. Whatever side of the thing you're on, everybody's got their own story, everybody's got their own thing. That's why I know this is gonna take a really long time. I'm not telling you to have compassion and love for the people that treat you like shit. We're not there yet as a society. We've got other shit to work through. If you need to be angry, be angry. If you need to be sad, you need to be sad. Whatever you need to do whatever you need to do. However, what I am suggesting is that if you take a look at the conflicts that happen inside of you and learn how to resolve them in the healthiest possible way that creates mutual benefit for both sides, you will be creating a perspective that the world sorely needs, and you will become something that the world sorely needs. And if enough of us do this, it can gain momentum in the collective consciousness to where this just becomes the way people do things. I'm old enough to remember being an adult before 2015. I'm old enough to remember what the world was like before then and how quickly culture can change when enough people demand it. The difference between 2015 to 2016 alone, completely different country, completely different collective consciousness, completely different everything. I don't really like the direction they went in that particular year. However, it was inspiring for me to show how much change is possible on a collective level when enough people demand it. So if you become this person, this becomes the natural way of doing things, it becomes the only thing that makes sense, and then you start dealing with other people that way, they start to get the idea, and next thing you know, this can catch on, and it all starts with you. So I wanted to share this with you because this dude's mindset and his monologue, even though he was ultimately wrong and did ultimately even change his mind, which I think is pretty cool, it showed me that there is a very real problem that on a collective level, none of us are engaging with. This is the only time I've ever even heard this idea discussed, and it was in an anime, which is why I push anime so much. Americans only talk about like very thinly veiled social commentary and political content, like barely, you can't even call it veiled anymore. Whereas in Japan, they tell these like deep stories about like what people go through and like existentialism and self-actualization and all this shit. So it's a completely different form of storytelling. And this one opened my eyes to such a huge way. So I hope what I've gotten from learning this has helped you in some way. I hope it's opened your eyes to some shit, shed light on something, or at the very least, I hope it's entertaining, and I hope this has helped you in some way. But if you have any questions, let me know. I love you. I'm Chris Roscoe, and I'll see you next time.